Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance units in eastern Donetsk region have intercepted and targeted a tank on which soldiers of the occupying Russian army had piled various items in order to protect it from Ukrainian drones. The shells fired from the drone burned the tank's armor, which eventually destroyed the armored vehicle. The Russian soldiers hiding around the tank also failed to avoid the drone strikes. After the successive strikes, several of the soldiers tried to escape, but were unable to do so and were destroyed.
Russia is preparing to escalate fighting near Kursk Oblast, according to Yevhen Dicky, a veteran of the Russia-Ukraine war and former Aidar Battalion company commander. He discussed the expected increase in hostilities with Radio NV. Russia's objectives likely extend beyond just 1% of Luhansk Oblast, and a serious threat to Lyman has emerged, which would be highly concerning. Losing cities that were once occupied and then liberated in 2022 would be a painful setback. It appears that Russia is specifically targeting Lyman. Their ability to secure positions on the eastern bank of the Zerabets River is troubling. With a force ratio of 1 to 10, holding them back will be extremely difficult. Ukraine's command must urgently reinforce its troops, but this raises the question, from where? There are no reserves in the rear. The frontline situation has significantly improved in recent months, largely due to better command structures and ongoing reforms under Major General Mikhailo Drapati, who leads Ukraine's land forces and the Khortytsia military district. However, mobilization efforts in the rear have not kept pace. This leaves a dilemma for Ukraine's top military leadership, including Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky and Drapati. They are fully aware of these challenges, but face the critical question of where to find reserves to reinforce another vulnerable sector. Pokrovsk was Russia's biggest advance in the past year, with a 47-kilometer push at the cost of tens of thousands of troops, equivalent to several full-strength European armies. However, Ukraine has now halted that advance. While Russian invaders remain near Pokrovsk and can observe it, they will not take it. Ukraine has had to deploy significant forces to hold Pokrovsk, but that may leave other areas exposed. Russia is probing for weaknesses, and the Lyman axis appears among the most vulnerable. Ultimately, Ukraine's military command will have to make difficult decisions on how to plug this gap. Meanwhile, mobilization efforts remain stagnant, with no major new initiatives to address the shortage of personnel. Another petition from Russians to Russian dictator Vladimir Putin regarding the so-called SVO has been published. Relatives of missing occupiers from the 25th Assault Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces are asking him to deal with the lawlessness. They tell about the total lawlessness that the commanders of this unit are committing. There is a whole set. Extortion of money from soldiers, sending them on meat assaults to certain death, forming crippled regiments, refusing to evacuate and much more. Many of us have been looking for our loved ones for over 2 years, and we cannot get any clarity from the command. The command of the unit, represented by commanders with the call signs Tiger and Eagle, throw our soldiers as expendable material into assaults, completely unprepared, without reconnaissance, cover, or artillery support. Soldiers are sent to assaults after serious injuries who are unable to hold a weapon. At the front, these commanders have introduced rates and extortion of money. If you pay, you will sit in the dugout. If not, you go on a one-way assault. Any attempts to call the commanders to justice automatically lead to sending them to the hottest spot on the front line. The leadership of this unit is engaged in forging the signatures of soldiers. The wounded die on the battlefield due to the lack of evacuation. They simply bleed to death, they say. Relatives note that this is not the first time they have turned to Putin for help. Despite the lack of results, they continue to appeal to the dictator. We understand the goals of the SVO, but did you set such goals? How is this possible in a state governed by the rule of law? Vladimir Vladimirovich, help us. Give the order to sort this out, the Russians said. Over the 3 years of full-scale war, thousands of similar statements have appeared from Russian soldiers and their relatives. The Russian dictator has not responded to any of them. Ukrainian analyst Serhiy Zgurets explained the recent slowdown in the Russian advance was influenced by weather conditions and significant losses. Deep State conducted a strategic analysis of the Russian advance. Indeed, in March, the invading Russian army managed to occupy 133 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. However, this is the lowest figure since the summer of 2024. Another important factor is the occupiers' losses, over 40,000 personnel. If we calculate the ratio of territory occupied by the Russians to their losses, March can be considered the month of the highest Russian casualties in over 1.5 years of combat, Zgurets explained on Espresso TV. The analyst pointed out that a new phase of intensified hostilities has begun, particularly following the regrouping of Russian forces. The Russian advance has stalled. However, there are factors that contribute to its inertia. Fighting during winter is particularly challenging. Additionally, the Russian advance has slowed due to significant exhaustion across multiple fronts. Now, a new wave of combat activity is beginning following some enemy regrouping. However, last month's results clearly show that the Ukrainian army is finding effective ways to counter the occupiers, both in terms of Russian personnel losses and the destruction of Russian artillery systems. In March, the Russian army also lost a significant amount of transport vehicles, while losses in armored equipment declined, he added. Russia's Ukraine invasion continued to lose momentum in March 2025, with the Kremlin's territorial gains reportedly falling for a fourth consecutive month. According to new data from the Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces captured 240 square kilometers of Ukrainian land throughout March, representing the smallest monthly total since the current wave of offensive operations began in the summer of 2024. News of Russia's slowing advance comes as Russian President Vladimir Putin claims that his invading army currently holds the strategic initiative along the entire front line of the war in Ukraine. There are now reasons to believe we can finish off the Ukrainian military, he told submarine crews last week during a visit to the North Russian port city of Murmansk. While Putin predicts impending Russian victory, the evidence on the ground in Ukraine would seem to suggest otherwise. Far from being on the verge of crumbling, Ukraine's defensive lines have strengthened significantly in recent months. As a result, advancing Russian forces continue to suffer heavy losses without achieving any meaningful breakthroughs.